All right, everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for our business series November workshop. Our guest today will be giving an economic forecast and helping us understand what it means for small businesses. So today's event was made possible to our presenting sponsor, PNC, and with us representing is Ellen Kaiser, Vice President, Client Relations Director, Client and Community Relations Director, to provide a few sponsor remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much, Hannah, for having me today. On behalf of PNC, I wanted to thank you all for joining us today for the business series powered by PNC. PNC is proud to sponsor this series, and we're grateful to the York County Economic Alliance and Downtown Inc. for their vision and drive to bring together our region's best and brightest for ongoing dialogue, exploring best practices in business. I look very forward to our insightful conversation this afternoon and hearing from the panelists as well. Again, thank you on behalf of PNC, and I really look forward to our interactive conversation.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you for PNC's partnership. It really means a lot to Downtown Inc. and the businesses of our downtown. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody viewing that we will be taking questions later in the session. So while all of our attendees are on mute and we can't see you, we would encourage you to ask questions for our presenters in the chat, and you may submit them at any time in the Q&A or the chat feature, and we'll get to them, as many of them as we can, at the end of the session. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists today. With us, we have Laura Manion and Silas Chamberlin. Laura Manion is currently serving as the manager for the Great Lakes Regional Office for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. In this role, she cultivates and maintains legislative, political, media, and grassroots resources throughout Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania to further the Chamber's public policy goals. She has previously held roles with Villanova University and the Republican Party of Pennsylvania. Lauren is a Franklin and Marshall and Westchester University graduate. Dr. Silas Chamberlin is a Vice President of Economic Development at the York County Economic Alliance, a position which he oversees a variety of economic financing, business attraction, and workforce development initiatives throughout York County. Silas previously served as the CEO of Downtown Inc., Executive Director of the Schuylkill River National Heritage Area, and in regional leadership roles with the PA Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. He's currently an adjunct professor of economics and urban revitalization at York College of Pennsylvania. Silas and Laura, thank you so much for being here with us today. Laura will start out and provide us with an economic forecast as it relates to small business, and then Silas will speak to how merchants and other small businesses can leverage this forecast to prepare and improve their business. So at this point, Laura, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Hannah, for that introduction. And I just want to thank JJ and the York County Economic Alliance for having me today. Very happy to share the stage with Silas and be here with you all. So my plan is to sort of give a brief overview from our an economic standpoint, a real macro level, and then I'll talk a little bit about small business towards the end, and we'll relay right into Silas's discussion. I'll give an economic overview starting sort of November 2021. What we're looking at right now, we're about halfway through the month. So we saw growth was 2% in the third quarter of 2021. Unfortunately, we expected a 4 to 5%. Estimate in early August was actually 8.5%, but we saw the Delta variant and supply chain issues take a big toll on that prediction. So about 2% growth for third quarter 2021 at this time. For fourth quarter estimates, we're thinking 5%. So it's on the rise. We could see it getting 6% or above if the data continues to stay positive. We are seeing a little bit of consumers sour on the economy in August, and then sort of leaned into more of a depressed sentiment persisting as we head into the fall. but they continue to spend. So it's a good sign that economic activity is decoupled from rising inflation fears right now. We are seeing that consumer spending within the economy. But we do continue to see workforce, supply chain issues, and inflation continue to hold the economy back. Employment is still 4.2 million below pre-pandemic levels. We added 531,000 jobs in October, but as of the end of September, there are still 10.4 million job openings. We've really never seen that before, where the amount of job openings are continuing to outweigh the number of unemployed persons in America. So that's something that the chamber itself is really looking forward to addressing. That gap, we need to shrink that gap because there are 2.76 million more job openings than there are unemployed workers. And that is, that's a workforce issue. And we're seeing it across the country, especially within our restaurant industry, hospitality industry. It really is hitting across all levels of the economy, but really hitting those. The supply chain issues we're seeing right now is a direct result of a workforce shortage. So we did see some job openings increase and were filled in the healthcare and social service industry, state and local government, and education. But we're still seeing openings in trade, IT, and other services throughout the country. So right now the worker shortage index is now 0.87, which means there's more openings than unemployed, and that's the lowest ratio ever. Openings have increased about 3.7 million in 2021. So we're seeing rates at all-time highs, and we're looking to address those because that's leading us right towards inflation. I'm sure if you've been watching the news or if you've headed to the gas pump or to the grocery store recently, you've seen inflation was 4.4% in September. I believe we're at 6.1% recently announced last week. Inflation is running hot because there is a rising demand. There's money in people's pockets, and our supply chains are choked up at the moment. So multiple factors leading to that. Supply chain issues and pent-up savings, that will work itself out eventually, but we're thinking this will probably be mid-2022 to end of 22 before we see this really start to level out. We do have higher wages right now that we're seeing, and we're thinking those will become more permanent as workers begin to demand those higher wages, and employers are providing them to get more people into the door and to work. We're also seeing, that will likely be a more permanent, higher wages lead to more spending. So we do see a little bit of a positive there. There are a few things in Congress right now, the reconciliation bill, that could also cause a more permanent inflation, but I'll get to that a little later. So right now, like I said, inflation is the highest it's ever been. We are raising the alarm bell on that, but we are hoping that by the end of next year, we'll see that sort of take a dip. And we're continuing to see, as I said, wage growth is remaining strong. We saw a housing market this summer. More people were buying. The market was incredibly competitive. So if you, like myself, tried to buy a house this summer, it was not an easy task. That's starting to level off a little bit. It is getting a little easier to buy a house, but we are seeing rates go, creep back up. They were incredibly low this summer. So while there's more inventory, rates are going up. As I said, inflation at the pump, in the grocery store. So consumers, workers, families are starting to notice these numbers are on the rise. And what that means for the economy is that either they're going to spend their money or they're going to pocket it. So we're going to continue to look at those numbers and see where that leads us. But right now we know consumer sentiment for November in the economy is the lowest point we've seen in a decade because of that inflation. So we're going to continue to harp on inflation being a major issue right now, as well as talk about the economy and adding jobs. So we added 531,000 jobs in October. which was over the consensus, which was 450,000. So we are seeing a positive there. In September, they only added 312,000 and the estimate was 194,000. So we are trending in the right direction. A multitude of factors, but we did see the unemployment, the extra supplemental unemployment benefits from the government ended in September. So we did see a little bit more folks get back to work. But 104,000, that's what job growth grew by. That's not as much as we were hoping. So it is proof that we are still struggling to get workers back into the labor force, specifically within our small business community. As I said, wages are on the rise. But we're hoping, as we head into the holiday season, that money will be spent specifically in our small businesses as they continue to crawl out of the pandemic. Other notes, so the economy slowed in Q3. We saw a huge rise in Q2 to 6.7%. Q3, we dipped down to 2%. So we're hoping the forecast is back up to 5% at the end of 2021. There's a lot of factors there. As I said, some people saving, pocketing that money that they were getting. And we are seeing income fall slightly in September because of that government support. Wage and salary incomes rose 0.8%, but business income dropped 0.7%. So while income is still strong, it is 7.8% higher than it was before the pandemic. And while wages and salaries are growing, we are seeing a slight fall in that income for businesses. So that's a sign too that businesses are having to pay workers more. Savings, as I mentioned, are at an all-time high. It exploded during the pandemic. We had a total savings of over 4.5 trillion. Yes, trillion, not billion, since March of 2020. That's roughly 2.6 trillion over what we normally would have saved as Americans. So this is an accumulation of money that is waiting to be spent when the economy opens. Savings is finally tailing off, as I said, as that government supplemental support ended and there's more of a normal shift as we head into the holiday season again, with supply chain issues, with the Chinese New Year coming up, we will hopefully see some more spending in small businesses rather than our big box stores and online in organizations such as Amazon. So I will sort of, as a segue, talking about Amazon and small business, we'll talk a little bit about what this means for small business. So we have a lot going on in DC always, but especially throughout the pandemic. As a small business, I'm sure everyone was tuning in last year to hear more about, what type of support small business was getting from the government. The U.S. Chamber advocated for, and Congress passed 7 laws in 12 months to aid small business. The Small Business Administration dispersed over $1 trillion through its disaster loan program and PPP through since March of 2020. So work continues to be done on SBA's Restaurant Revitalization Fund. As I mentioned, restaurants have been hit hard. Shuttered venue operator grants and PPP forgiveness benefits for America's small business community. So the Chamber, huge advocates of that. Throughout the pandemic, making sure that our small businesses were taken care of because they were hit the hardest. The current business landscape for small business, about 56% of, we recently did a survey and about 66% of small business owners said that it's going to take 6 months to another year before the U.S. small business climate returns to normal. 21%, a little more optimistic, between 3 and 6 months. There was that 13% who said never, but that 56% we are, that pulse that we're getting is that the small business community is, there's light at the end of the tunnel and there's optimism there. So as I mentioned, we recently did a survey with MetLife for a small business index for Q3 of 2021. Our index score is 56.6, which is down 3.4% points since last quarter, but in line with the beginning of 2021, which was 55.9. So 34% of small businesses rate the US economy as good, which is up 7 points and the highest level since the pandemic started, but still below the 60% rating pre-pandemic. So we are, as I said, seeing a little bit of optimism that's from our small business community that we will start to trend in the right direction and move forward. 58% of small businesses anticipate that their revenue will increase this year. So we are, again, seeing that optimism. Another question as part of our MetLife survey was, would you say it was easy or hard to find the talent you need right now? No surprise to many on this call, 42% said that it's been incredibly difficult and they're competing for talent with larger businesses in the community. But 44% are saying that they are finding candidates to fill open positions. So that's a pretty decent percentage for this time. We are seeing a little bit of a decline in small business startups. So that's something the chamber would like to focus on, getting that innovation back into our community, getting those businesses started up. We did see during COVID, we saw a little bit of a rise in, or pre-COVID, we were on the rise for small business startups. We have obviously taken a dip. We need to get that innovation back up and going, and get more folks back to work through those startups, through our small businesses. Those are the core of America. So some legislative action items we recently saw on yesterday, actually, the president signed the infrastructure bill into law. This was a years-long fight. It's the biggest investment in infrastructure, the biggest modernization we've seen in decades. And the chamber was a huge advocate of getting this bill passed. This will get people back to work. This will modernize our roads, bridges, ports, everything we need to get our economy back. So we are a huge supporter of that. Like I said, it was signed into law yesterday. We're incredibly excited about what that's going to mean for this country, especially in Pennsylvania. Another bill right now in DC is the multi-trillion-dollar budget reconciliation bill. The chamber is opposing that. We don't think now is the time to spend trillions and tax those specifically in the middle class who are continuing to crawl out of the pandemic. So the chamber is adamantly opposed to the reconciliation bill. We'll continue to fight against it because we don't think it is good for business right now. And we're watching that very closely. Some resources we have for you all. This summer, the chamber launched the America Works initiative. It's a great resource on our website for employer-led solution, industry-based solutions. We have every business that you can imagine. We are talking to them daily. We're getting information from them. We are seeing creative ideas that we can then pass along to you all to apply in your business. So if you check out our website, the America Works Initiative, it's a great way to talk to others in the industry about what you all are facing and how you can come together to solve it. We also have Co, which is the chamber's small business focused foundation. That is a great way. If you get on the email list, that's a great way to get information directly from small business owners to small business owners. We do a lot of great resources there. We also on our website have facts on the OSHA ETS for COVID-19 vaccines. This has been the #1 discussion from employers. Some people don't think 100 employees is a small business, but to others that qualifies. So there's a lot of information on our website. Happy to answer any questions, but we do have resources for you all during this trying time, and we're here to support and advocate for you. So with that, I will turn it back over, Hannah, and have Silas speak.
Thanks, Laura. Yep, we're going to turn it over to Silas for his presentation.
All right. All right, great. So I'm going to try to go from sort of the macro perspective on the economy to the impact of those trends in downtown York, and offer up some hyper-local type resources that hopefully would be useful to our small businesses that we work with regularly. So just to give a really broad picture, and some of this just reinforces what Laura just described at a national level, what we are seeing here in York County, a number of positive indicators, but also some things that are really worrisome heading into the late fall and the winter. Continue to see strong gains in manufacturing and retail in York County. Manufacturing is 18% of our overall GDP or our economic output in York County. Retail is one of our largest employers, so these are both really important. Both of those workforces have now exceeded pre-COVID levels, so have returned and actually grown, but obviously still face a lot of complicated issues surrounding them. Unemployment in York is lower than our state average, and new unemployment claims are back to the level of pre-COVID 2019 levels. So that's a positive indicator, but at the same time, our workforce, our labor force has shrunk. So some people have just permanently dropped out of the labor force, and that's why we've seen that unemployment rate go down a little bit. Consumer demand does remain strong, but is sort of threatened by a lot of the ongoing issues that Laura just documented. Household spending has increased, and I'll have some detail on that. And average hourly earnings have been increasing in York County as well, in large part due to the labor shortage and businesses trying to recruit employees. The things that are worrisome to us looking at the next quarter or so is that businesses and consumer confidence have slowed, in large part due to the resurgence of COVID and it lingering longer than expected and the COVID variant. The weak labor force participation, namely in the service sectors who have really struggled to add employees, and obviously persistent inflation that at one time was hoped to be very short-lived, now obviously is lingering longer. There's also the expectation that prices will continue to increase due to inflation, that supply chains will continue to be disrupted at least through the holiday season. And when you couple that with wage pressure and high job turnover, those are a lot of red flags for our small business community and our business community in general. And again, the thing that's most worrisome is that I think a lot of our businesses had planned to weather this storm in the short term and are now seeing that these trends are here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. So how are consumers in York County feeling? And these are both at a national level and in York County. On a national level, as Laura suggested, consumer sentiment is depressed overall and it continues to fall. It's actually very similar to what we saw at the onset of the pandemic and is significantly lower than this time last year. So that's, heading in the wrong direction in a lot of ways. Consumer spending, however, has remained stable and has actually grown a little bit, not broadly, but in September's US retail sales, we saw an increase across most of the categories of just under 1%. If you drill down into York County, consumer spending is actually trending in the right direction, but it trails the nation and the state in its increases. At the start of this year, it was 33% below the pre-COVID benchmark, which would be January 2020, right before the pandemic began. And since then, it has slowly increased to the point where in September and October of this year, estimates showed consumer spending in the county gained ground. It was just about 10% less than before COVID. So closing that gap, although consumer spending continues to be significantly suppressed, which obviously poses challenges for our small businesses that are trying to attract that spending. The outlook for the foreseeable future is that households, obviously have been spending. There is a projection that we'll have a record sales season for holiday spending overall. Obviously, those trends will depend quite a bit on how households are looking at their spending patterns, given inflation, and how individual businesses respond to supply chain challenges and workforce challenges in having the inventories available that consumers will actually need to spend on. So a lot of uncertainty, and I would describe it, and our economic consultants at the Center for Regional Analysis describe it as a darkening outlook, where there's more negativity outweighing the positivity at this moment. How are employees feeling? So in York County's service sector, which we consider as being the wholesale trade, retail trade, professional services, healthcare, leisure, hospitality, it won't be surprising that 7,000 employees left the workforce in 2021 so far. You can see how that was spread across those different service sectors. Ironically, within here, the retail trade has actually grown its workforce, despite the challenges of high turnover and the need to increase wages. We did not see a significant change with the end of federal unemployment benefits. I know many employers were hoping that was the case, that was artificially keeping people out of the workforce. But we have not seen some of our critical sectors gain that workforce back with the end of those benefits. So if you are in the retail trade, it's some positive news that compared to other service sectors, you've been able to attract a workforce and keep them and actually grow it from 2019 levels before the pandemic. As you can see, leisure and hospitality continues to be very, very hard hit, has not gotten anywhere close to getting back to pre-COVID employment levels. Same is true with wholesale trade and other business and professional services. So one of the reasons that we feel employees are, staying out of the workforce right now, and this is one that we like to talk a lot about in York County because it's very tangible, is the crisis that we're facing with childcare. In York County, before the COVID pandemic, there were already over 18,000 children that were in need of high quality, affordable childcare and weren't able to access it. Due to COVID, with centers having to restrict the amount of children they had in a center and some providers permanently closing, we saw that gap grow by 3,400 seats, which means that we have over 20,000 children in York County that are unable to find care. Obviously that's important socially, culturally, it's not good for children, but it also is not good for families. And it means that parents are unable to enter the workforce and start to fill some of these workforce gaps that we're seeing. And so from a workforce development perspective, we are seeing women in particular dropping out of the labor force. And until we're able to address these systemic issues with childcare, we're really unable to address some of those structural issues with the workforce. I'll just include this because it shows graphically where those concentrations are located in terms of childcare not being in ready supply. You can see the city of York there is a U.S. childcare desert, because although there's a concentration of childcare in the city of York, it's not adequate to meet the needs of a young population that we have concentrated in the city. And you can see in the surrounding suburbs as well, lack of childcare options. So, increasingly, I think economic developers, workforce folks are looking at childcare sort of inherently part of that workforce conversation. And we've been able to document that very clearly here in York. Some other indicators that we're looking at that are very positive is that downtown real estate remains strong. The office market, which many of us were afraid would sort of fall off a cliff with people, remaining remote, not coming back to office jobs, has so far not really materialized. Vacancy rates in our downtown are relatively stable. We're actually seeing businesses come in and fill some of that vacant office space. So that's been positive. The residential market continues to set records. The housing inventory in York County and in downtown York is at historic lows, where there's only several weeks of inventory on the market at any given time. And some of the studies that Downtown Inc. has done on the city of York's residential market continue to be true, which is that although we've added a lot of market rate residential housing in recent years, there is still significant unmet demand, which means as those units come online in the coming years, as developers produce more market rate residential, it'll put more people on the streets of downtown York to be able to patronize our small businesses. So those are all positive indicators. The result of all that has been that there's been significant business churn in downtown York during the pandemic, but overall growth. In the last year, we've seen 42 new businesses open in the business improvement district downtown, 14 business expansions, so existing businesses that have expanded their footprint. and 11 business closures. So obviously you never want to see any business closures, but even in a typical year in downtown York, we would see that churn. So, trying to look back historically at how many businesses we've created on average in non-pandemic years, it ranges anywhere from like 25 to 35 new businesses. So 42 new businesses, I think, represents some of that national trend towards entrepreneurship that's emerging out of the pandemic and its recovery. And we're seeing that here in York. There's significant wait lists for space in Central Market, which has not always been the case. So that's a great indicator of people wanting to launch a small business or establish a presence in the downtown. If you walk through our downtown, there's a very low inventory of available storefronts, especially in the unit blocks close to our square and across the bid. And countywide, business attraction is really robust. Lots of site selectors reaching out, wanting to locate to York County. And that really never stopped during the pandemic. That's been one of the really reassuring things we've been able to see in our economy, in part due to the onshoring of manufacturing and trying to make supply chains a little more local. All that being said, when we look at the impacted sectors in York County that will continue to need attention, for us, accommodations and food, so hotels, the hospitality industry, arts, entertainment, and recreation, and retail trade rise to the top of that list of concern. These are sectors that typically employ economically vulnerable workers. They've been affected by business restrictions very heavily. They were, in some cases, less likely to get PPP than other businesses, unable to shift to remote work, suffer from shifts in consumer spending. So all said, many of our small businesses in downtown York fall into those categories. So that's obviously cause for concern across York County. That represents nearly 37,000 of our employees. So when we're looking at ways to support our small business community, we're really focusing in on some of those industries. As Laura pointed out, federal aid was incredibly important to keeping our businesses functioning and allowing them to weather the worst of the pandemic. But obviously, even with that significant federal aid, there were gaps that remained. More than 70% of York County businesses did not receive PPP. There was significant PPP loans made in the city of York, 350 that we were able to document, but that only represents 18% of our businesses. And obviously there were short-term benefits. One of the things that also concerned us and that we've tried to mitigate with some of our local funding is that some of that federal relief reinforced economic inequities. On average, small businesses in majority Black neighborhoods, including several in the city of York, waited much longer than businesses in majority white neighborhoods to receive their PPP loans. In general, minority-owned businesses were less likely to apply, and when they did, more likely to use companies that were less conventional than a traditional bank. And those trends held true for other forms of federal support at the same time. So that's not to say that PPP and EIDL and other programs were unimportant. They were incredibly important. It just left some gaps that we were able to address or try to address with some of our local funding sources. So in 2020, YCEA, Downtown Inc., and the County of York had the YoCo Strong Restart Fund. We were able to award $14 million across York County, including 200 business and nonprofit grants in our downtown. Unlike some of the federal programs, we're able to drive 39% of that funding to small businesses owned by people of color and 45% within those vulnerable industries that I already identified. So although this was a countywide program, out of 812 grants countywide, 25% were made in downtown York. The reason I mention that is because we currently have another round of Restart grants available with $9.5 million available from our county commissioners through the YoCo Strong Restart program. Again, prioritizing historically disadvantaged businesses and industry sectors that have continued to be hardest hit, such as retail, hospitality, arts, recreation, and childcare. That program is now open until not November 19th, but next Monday. So it's been extended through the weekend. Grants of up to $20,000 based on revenue. Open to small businesses and nonprofits established before July 1st, which is really important because many of the state and federal programs and even our own programs that we've had available in the past were not available to startups that have begun their business since the pandemic. And this is a great way to get some funding to them. Small businesses with less than 3 million in revenue and 50 full-time employees, very similar metrics for nonprofits. So we are trying to focus on smaller businesses. And if you are interested in that and you're viewing this, you can go to YoCostrong.org, not .com, and access all the eligibility information, webinars, office hours, and reach out to us for support, which is also available bilingually. The other program that I think speaks to how organizations are getting more creative in how they provide support, financial support, and technical assistance to businesses is the Creative Entrepreneur Accelerator Program, which is a cultural alliance program made possible by the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. This is focused on providing technical assistance and grant funding to our creative entrepreneurs. And that is not just artists, but graphic designers, people working in the creative industries in general. And so if you are somebody that's an artist or somebody in the creative industries, go to culturalyork.org and check out the Creative Entrepreneur Accelerator Program. You may be eligible for technical assistance, mentorship, and grants that would help support your business and the recovery from the pandemic. So my final slide is what can you do? And obviously it's hard to translate a lot of these macroeconomics and local economic information into things that you as a small business owner can do. But a few things I would recommend is continuing to seek public funding opportunities when they're available and appropriate. We hear from businesses all the time that they are not comfortable applying because they feel like other people need the funding more, or they have somehow managed to get by. And that's very noble, but it also means that the people that we are intending to get these funds to are not fully taking advantage of it. So if you're a small business that has just been able to operate throughout the pandemic and had to tap into your own savings or extend your lines of credit or do other things to stay in operations, you should be reaching out to us to see if you are eligible for one of these grants. And it's very likely that you are. So don't feel like these programs are intended for others. They are intended for you as small business owners in the city of York and across York County. There will be opportunities, I believe, for small businesses to emphasize, buying local and made local campaigns to customers who are likely to face supply chain issues at some of the larger businesses. So big box stores that may have supply chain disruptions and the traditions of sort of going out and parents picking out the hottest gift and then it running out is going to be aggravated this year, obviously. Anybody that shops through Amazon knows that even some of those delivery times and availabilities have suffered. So the idea of businesses that are able to take advantages of local supply chains, locally manufactured products, locally sourced products are really going to have a competitive advantage to say, look, we have inventory in place, and try to make that very apparent to your customers who may be running into issues through some of the places they would traditionally shop. The others is that consumers are obviously pretty bummed out right now. These are tough times for the economy, for the business community, but also just households in general who are spending more. Shopping in a downtown setting or through a small business is an experience in and of itself that can be very positive and a way to try to harness some positivity in these very trying times. So it's tough to play this well, but trying to play off of some of those inflation worries by recognizing them, offering specials or themes that are aimed directly at these issues. Again, playing up, buying local, making local, offering competitive prices despite inflation are all really important ways that you can try to take a really negative context and make it positive. It's also really important to continue to offer methods to access your business to COVID cautious customers who may not be comfortable coming in person. We are definitely seeing the trends come back to on in-person shopping, but we also know that there are many people who still feel uncomfortable coming into your business physically. So having an online presence, it may not be possible for you to offer full-blown e-commerce and put your whole inventory online, but even something as simple as gift cards can be really important. Or offering socially distanced pickup methods, off-hour pickup methods, anything you can do to allow people to spend money in your business, but still follow the protocols that they're safe with is just really important to keep in mind. And then finally, a lot of the data that I just pulled from on York County's economy is available bi-monthly through our economic snapshots. And we do semi-annual data reports on York County's economy. So if you do like to think about your business in the context of what's going on more broadly in the economy, make sure you're signed up for YCEA's newsletter. We make those economic snapshots available for free and include a lot of great interpretation in there that helps you understand how all these larger trends potentially affect your business. So with that, I will turn it back over to Hannah.
Thanks, Silas. And thank you to both of our speakers for those presentations. I know I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our business owners viewing did as well. So we do have, we're solid on time here for Q&A, and we do have some questions that have been submitted in the chat and in our Q&A box. So I'm going to go ahead and read them off. I'll start with Lauren's. Lauren's asking, what suggestions do you have for smaller businesses who cannot afford the higher salaries? So I'm not sure who wants to answer that, but I'll turn it over to Silas, Laura, or even Ellen, if you guys want to take a snap at that.
I'm happy to just start off by saying, $7.25 minimum wage right now, that will likely go up. Where that will go up, we're not sure. Looks like that could be addressed next year. I know a lot of people talk about $15 should be our minimum wage. There is no scientific or economic data to support that number, and no research really done there. So that's something we need to keep in mind, that while $7.25 may be low right now and needs to be addressed, that $15, there is really no economic basis for that number and research done. But I do think we will see a higher federal minimum wage under the Biden administration. What can you do if you can't offer these? Right now retailers are doing $20 an hour. When I walked into Wawa recently, it was free shorties every shift, $1,500 signing bonus. People are throwing whatever they can out. We hear a lot about company culture. I think that's so incredibly important. If you are a small business and you run your business where you care about your employees like a family, sometimes that does mean more than what you're being paid on the back end, because a lot of times, those larger corporations may have a higher price tag for their employees, but they don't treat them, the way many people want to be treated. We are seeing, right now, especially with millennials in the workforce, they want to work from home. They want to have, flexible work schedules. They want to be able to bring their dog to work. Silas talked about childcare being a huge barrier right now. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed. And maybe not for a small business who maybe you can't have your employees work from home, but there are different and creative ways that you can build a culture within your company that will keep people there rather than going somewhere where they may be able to make more money. And I'll let Ellen or Silas.
Yeah, I'm actually going to walk out and ask our CEO if we can add free hoagies to our benefit. I feel like we've been gypped. But I would say you went right where I was thinking with culture. Obviously, not every employee, employees are motivated by compensation, but there's benefits that you can offer, which is just having a really welcoming workplace, one that's flexible, one that allows you to work hours that are convenient for you. Sometimes that means you're not going to find one employee to fill all your hours that you're trying to cover, but maybe it means that you can find 3 that could each do, part-time or minimal time, and using that creativity about what makes your business a good place to work, whether that's things like, I know from some other business conversations, dress code is a big one right now, even at some of our long-time corporate, like larger corporations, saying like, look, you can go to that law firm where you still got to wear a 3-piece suit every day and a tie. You can come to our law firm where at least you can get away with khakis and a button down. So, some changing some of those long-standing cultures, workplace cultures, I think can just set you apart a little bit. For a very small business, who knows what that one thing is going to be that sets you apart. It could be like giving somebody a little extra time to go to Central Market to pick up lunch instead of, asking them to work through the lunch hour, bringing them coffee every day, something small, but meaningful that they're not going to get at, a bigger business where they, are just another employee. But Ellen, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I was on a call earlier today about talent and retaining talent. And one of the conversations there was really about what you just mentioned around the flexibility of scheduling. And the HR director from the giant company was on, and he was talking about this new software that they're investing in because they have a generation of employees who don't want to work the set schedule that we might think of in that vein. And so, I think to your point, as a smaller employer who can perhaps look at piecing together schedules for individuals that work differently, that can go a long, long way. And I think the culture of shifting attire is also real. I say that as somebody that works at a fairly large financial institution, and like, I haven't seen a tie in like 2 years. So, it is a whole new world, and we all are continuing to grow through that process. And I think there are some ways to create those competitive advantages regardless of the size of business.
Yeah.
I would also just add to my answer. We hear a lot about DEI right now, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's such an important, it's on the forefront of so many people's minds. So being an employer that is respectful of all aspects of DEI, I think goes a long way with employees today.
Yeah, and I would just add that, that's also a way to expand your customer base. If you are a very small business in like a retail setting or a restaurant setting, whatever it is, think about who you're not currently attracting and be open to the reasons why, and think about who, those people that you're not attracting as potential customers that could be walking in your door. Great for the employees that work with you, but also great for expanding your customer base just by being a welcoming business.
All right, so I want to move to the next one. Thank you guys for your answers. The next one here is how well, I know we talked about this a little bit, but let's see if we can elaborate a little more for this question. How will delayed shipping and rising costs of goods affect small businesses? And then the second part of that is, will this trend continue throughout next year, 2022, or will the rising costs and delayed shipping subside at some point in the year?
So I actually just sat on a call about this with our lead supply chain guru at the chamber. To answer the second part of that question, we will likely see this through mid-2022, just with how backed up we are in the ports right now. In Long Beach, they're literally leaving shipping containers on the side of the road because they don't have people to unload them. And as I mentioned, as we head into the holidays, and then specifically the Chinese New Year too, because we do import so many goods from China, this is a great way for small businesses to capitalize on these issues. If you have the goods in store, we are the type of people who want things now. And that's why people order from Amazon, because they can get it the next day or that day. So right now we are seeing, especially with younger generations, sustainability. The amount, of energy it takes to ship something into this or import something into this country, get it across state lines, travel around. Energy prices are at an all-time high. Gas prices are at an all-time high. We're in a workforce shortage, so we don't even have people to drive things around. If you can source your the things in your store locally, and you can use small businesses, sort of like Etsy, but in real life, gathering things from the community. I'm sure there's so many great businesses in York that would love, small business owners who'd love to have their stuff sold in stores, this is the time to capitalize on that. And especially because now I can drive to the boutique down the store and buy something rather than the boots that I ordered in July that just showed up last week, which are white cowboy boots and cannot be worn outside of the summer. So thank you. Can't even wear them. Should have gone to the store down the street. So now is the time. Like I said, young people are all about sustainability. The amount that it takes to import and get things around this country and the toll on the environment, now's the time to capitalize on this. So I think we will see a lot of shopping small, shopping local this holiday season and into next year.
Thanks, Laura. I also think you can wear them now.
I've been wearing them every day just to get my use out.
It's like when
proper. I've literally been wearing them every day.
It's like when ties went out the window at PNC, that Labor Day thing is out the window too. Wear them proudly.
Silas or Ellen, did you have anything to add to that question? Laura gave us a pretty good answer. Okay, so let's go to one last question. The last one is, what retail areas are poised for the most growth in the current economic climate?
Happy to start off just from the chamber's perspective. I would say every retail industry is poised for growth, from mom and pop on Main Street to big box stores on along the highway. I mean, we are hopefully, as Silas and I talked about, consumer confidence right now is not good, but people are still spending. So we are hoping that, obviously the travel industry, hospitality industry, hotels, air, people want to get out and they want to travel. We will see some of those industries will hopefully boom, especially in the start of 22. But with that, that brings more people to Main Streets to hopefully spend as they're now taking vacations, but also visiting family that they may not have seen for the last year and a half. We are seeing consumer confidence go up. We're hoping that consumer confidence will go up and people will get back into stores. But I think every industry has the ability right now to capitalize on customers, especially with the passage of the infrastructure bill, and we start seeing people back to work. Maybe they're sent somewhere to go work on a project. They're staying in the local area. They're going to the restaurants. They're spending money at the local stores. So hopefully we'll see, retail really pick up as we head into 2022.
Yeah, and I would just add, historically, as we've emerged from recessions or other economic disruptions, there's just been economic growth in general, but also just a rise in entrepreneurship. I think if you look at the rate of new business creation that we've seen the last year, and then you drill that down into 26 square blocks of the city of York, you can see those trends playing out. It's just amazing how many people see the opportunity and are grasping it. And so if you're an existing business, it's really about just continuing to build on that. And the fact that you were able to weather the worst of the pandemic, but lots of entrepreneurs, 40 of them have created new businesses in downtown York and are now poised to take advantage of that rebound. So, and Hannah, you see that every day, and that's, across the spectrum. So, we've seen restaurants, we've seen professional services, we've seen retail and boutiques, pretty much across the spectrum in terms of new businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I don't have any other questions, but thank you guys for answering those. I did just want to give a few friendly reminders from Downtown Inc. Switch gears a little bit. So this Friday at 10 a.m. we'll be at Sarah Ellen event venue in the YoCo district for Small Business Saturdays, our kickoff press conference. So please feel free, anybody's welcome to join us. And speaking of small business, it is coming up on November 27th. We have swag bag, goodie bags full of totes and stickers and coupons from American Express at the YCEA office on Roosevelt Avenue for our downtown New York merchants to give out during Small Business Saturday to their customers. And also parking will be free on Small Business Saturday around downtown York. So please help us spread the word about that. And it will also be free on Saturdays throughout the holiday season. We do have graphics about that. So we're going to drop in the chat John's email address. If you are interested in those graphics, we'd be more than happy to send you those. Also, this Sunday, we're getting downtown York ready for the holiday season by doing Hanging of the Greens, which is where we decorate downtown York with greens and bows, and everything looks so lovely and festive. So we are also taking volunteers for that. It's a really fun event. Nice quick event, but also everybody's happy and excited because it's the holidays. So please feel free to join us for that as well. Megan from our team is coordinating the volunteers. So thank you, John, for dropping her info in the chat. Feel free to reach out. And also, if your business is planning something special for the holiday season, if you're running a promotion for Small Business Saturday, if you'll be open for First Friday and you're doing something special, please let us help promote that. We put out a press release, we put out specific web pages, we have lots of social media content surrounding that, and we'd love to help promote it. So please also reach out. And 2022 Business Series workshops, the schedule will be posted soon on our website, so please keep an eye out for that. We also have a merchant Facebook group for downtown York businesses, so keep an eye on there as well. So Ellen, Silas, Laura, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Tons of good information. Like I said, I know I learned a lot, and I think our small business owners also have, and I think the running theme throughout last year and this year is that it's really important to support our small businesses. And we're happy to do that. And Laura, wear those white boots.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you when we see you.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Take care.